Hey everyone, this is Andy from 88 Card House. Today we're going to be talking about the top 8 decks at EUIC and Orlando this year. So first off, we're going to start with Tord Reklev's deck. It's a Charizard Pidgeot deck. So he's got 4 Charmanders, the 60 HP one, with the Heat Tackle. There's Charmeleon with the Flare Veil, which is really good against not being targeted by Sableye or De-Evolution. You have your 3 Charizard EXs, 2 Pidgeys, 2 Pidgeot EXs, 1 Radiant Zard, 1 Bidoof Barrel. It really helps your draw engine, especially if your Pidgeot EX gets bossed up and killed. And then you have 2 other V Pokemons. You got your Rotom V and Lumineon V. Rotom, it's really good to start off ideally with Charmander, Pidgey, and maybe another Charmander, and then put down the Rotom V so you could instant charge, especially if you go first. You won't be able to get off an attack with Clefha's Grasping Draw, so instant charge is the way to go. Also really good is next turn, following turn, you could use Arven, get the rare candy, and then another 4 seal. It's a really, really powerful combo. Obviously, Lumineon lets you find a supporter from your deck. Clefha is a free retreat, no energy needed for this attack, Grasping Draw, which allows you to draw up to 7 cards in hand. So that's really good early game, especially if you kind of brick. And then you have your Manaphy Jirachi to protect your bench, and that's it for Pokemon. For supporters, Tord's running a 3 Arven, 3 Iono, and 2 Boss's Orders, along with 2 Professor Turos, 1 Roxanne, and 1 Team Yell's Cheer. What looks different here is obviously the Professor Turo, 2 of them, and then the Team Yells. So this is clearly a design to be good against any stall or control decks. You could just use your Professor Turo scenario, pick up the Pokemon in the active, put it back in your hand, do that twice, Pidgeot search it, and then if you use both of them and you still need more, you go ahead and use Team Yell's Cheers, which allows you to put 3 supporters from your discard besides Team Yells back into your deck. So very powerful combo right here. For items, 4 rare candies, 4 Ultra Balls, 4 Buddy Poffins, 2 Super Rods, only 1 Nest Ball, 1 Counter Catcher, and then 1 Prime Catcher. So this is a really good, especially going into certain decks. So really powerful with the Prime Catcher. You could bring up any Pokemon that they're trying to power up on their side of the bench, your opponent's bench, and then just 4 rare candies, especially again in the mirror. A few Charizard decks play De-Evolution, so having 4 rare candies is the way to go. You obviously want to be evolving your Pidgeot EXs and Charmanders if you don't have the Charmeleon. Ultra Balls are good for bringing up any of these Pokemons, but usually you want to use them to bring out the Rotom V, Lumineon, or either Charizard EX or Pidgeot EX. If you have the Arven and a rare candy in hand, you could use an Ultra Ball to get your stage 2 Pokemon. Buddy Poffin, 4 of these, it just allows for good consistency in the deck, allows you to bring 2 Pokemon under 70 HP to your bench. So usually you want to set up if you think your opponent is playing like for example, Future Hands, they get attack their first turn. If you go first, then definitely you'd want to bring up 2 Pidgeys, 2 Charmanders, just double up. That's a really good idea. In case they take out one, you could still evolve the other in either Quick Search or attack with the Charizard if you're able to evolve it. So Buddy Poffin, just really, really good for consistency. Super Rods, 2 Super Rods, pretty self-explanatory. 3 energies or Pokemon from your discard into your deck. This deck plays 6 fire energies, so you do need to pay attention with your resource management and energy count. 1 Nest Ball. This deck does sacrifice a little bit of a consistency, but you're definitely okay with the 4 Buddy Poffins and the 4 Ultra Balls. 1 Nest Ball to bring out any of your basic Pokemon. Definitely not used with Lumineon because you can play this card from your hand in order to use its effect. But in the early game, it's good help setting up, or later in the game, it's good to draw your Radiant Zard or another Pokemon that maybe you super rotted back in and wanted to bring back. In terms of Lost Vacuum, just good to have in deck in case they have Stadium in play, or your opponent has a max belt on or a defiance band and you don't want them to have it anymore, or if they place down a force seal and haven't used it that turn, you could punish them by using the lost vacuum and taking away that ability of theirs. In terms of items, we have the choice belt, defiance band. These are really good, especially if you're behind. The defiance band has a damage modifier that adds 30 more damage to your Pokemon's attack if you're behind in prize cards. Choice belt adds 30 damage to any attacks against your opponent's Pokemon V, and then 6 fire energies. So typically with Charizards or Charizard decks, you'd want to go second because you don't really mind if you want to play from behind. So ideally, your Charizard it gets stronger over the course of the game. The more prizes your opponent takes, adds 30 more damage to your Charizard EX's attack. And also, you're able to use supporters if you go second. So that means if, say, you only drew one basic, or have one other basic in hand, and no Buddy Poffins, Nest Balls, or Ultra Balls, you can use your Arven, search for an item, and a Pokemon Tool card. You could search for your Buddy Poffin. That's a really strong start there. Or if it's really bad, you could just Iono and try to draw into these cards that help build your bench. And then, yeah, ideally you'd want to set up your draw engine. So your Pidgey first, ideally. Obviously, it's dependent on the game state, but ideally you want to set up your Pidgeys, get a Charizard out on the board, get a second Charmander ready to go, evolved into Charmeleon, and then your Bidoof setup, Bidoof Bibarel. And yeah, it's pretty straightforward. It's a very powerful deck right now. It's best deck in format, and yeah, you should give it a try. Alright, next, since I am familiar with Charizard, let's talk about the only other Charizard Pidgeot deck in the top 8 at EUIC. I'll go over here. Okay, so we have Will's deck. So there's a few slight variations in this deck compared to Tord's, but it's still a very powerful combination. You have the 3 Charmander 60 HP with the Heat Tackle. There is one 70 HP Charmander with the attack that discards the Stadium in play. 1 Charmeleon, same thing. 3 Charizard EX, 2 Pidgey, 2 Pidgeot EXs, 1 Radiant Charizard, 1 Rotom V, 1 Lumineon V, and 1 Cleffa, 1 Manaphy as well. So just similar Pokemon, 1 different Charmander, and then this removes the Bibarel and Bidoof from the deck, from Tord's deck. Supporters are pretty similar. For the first half, we have 3 Arvens, 3 Ionos, 2 Boss's Orders, 1 Roxanne. But in this deck, there's only 1 Professor Churro scenario and 1 Eerie. Eerie, good against, well, it feels good to take out 2 rare candies from the mirror matchup if your opponent is waiting to evolve. Or if they are Chinpao, for example, if you take out their superior energy retrieval or even their rare candies, don't let them evolve their Frigibacks. That really dismantles their ability to go on the offensive. In terms of item cards, there's 4 Ultra Balls, 3 Nest Balls, so 2 more than Tord's deck, 3 Buddy Poffins, 2 Super Rods, 2 Counter Catchers, 1 more than Tord's deck, 1 Lost Vacuum, and 1 Pal Pad here. So instead of a Team Yells Pal Pad, they have this here, so you're allowed to bring 2 supporter cards from your discard back into your deck. We have 2 Technical Machines de-evolutions, so really good against the mirror matchup, especially if your opponent doesn't know that you're playing de-evolutions. They'll sometimes be greedy and evolve their Pidgeot EX, Charizard EX with rare candies, and even bring a 3rd one up, and you can really punish them by bringing this out. We have the Max Belt instead of the Prime Catcher, so adds 50 damage to your Pokemon's attack against your opponent's EXs. So really good against future hands in the early game, really good against like Raging Bolt. Just a good card overall, especially in the early game. If your opponent takes 1 prize and or your Charizard would be swinging for 210 plus 50 is 260 damage already. So this in the early game, if your opponent brings out, for example, a Roaring Moon EX, you could one-shot it with a Charizard. 180 plus the 50 is 230, which is just enough to take out your Roaring Moon EXs. 1 choice spell. There's no Vitality Band in this deck. There is 1 Forest Seal, 1 Collapse Stadium, and then 6 energies, same as Tor Reklev's deck. So this is tech towards sort of more the mirror matchup. Really good against decks with Pokemon EXs. and it just seems to be a little bit more consistency in terms of setting up turn one. It's very similar to Tord's deck. One less Buddy Poffin, two more Nest Balls, and yeah, there you have it. Two powerful decks at your EUIC's top 8. So we'll talk about one more Charizard Pidgeot deck. This is actually the winner of Orlando Regional. This is Liam Halliburton's deck. So basically it is Tord's deck with one minor change, and that's one of the Charmanders, 60 HP, Liam swapped out for a 70 HP Charmander with the attack that discards the stadium in play. So obviously this is a good deck. In the finals, this Liam faced off against Ancient Moon, Ancient Box deck, and it's still a really powerful deck, even though Moon gets powerful over time with more ancient cards in the discard. Charizard EX, just once you set up your turn 2, you could start taking prizes. Even with the booster capsule, after the Ancient Block takes its first prize card, your Charizard is hitting for 210. So ideally you want to get set up with your Charizard EX, your Pidgeot EX, and your barrels, and just draw and set up your next Charmander, Charmeleon, ready to evolve after your active Charizard EX gets knocked out. And you have your Radiant Zard so that they can't take a 2-prizer. So overall, very powerful deck. You could use your Professor Turos after you get set up. You could bring back take off your Lumineon V, your Rotom V from the playing field. So they don't become targets by Ancient Moon. Because they do play a Prime Catcher. So ideally, once you get set up with your Charizard EX, or at least one Pidgeot EX and Barrel, either or, you'd want to use Professor Turo to take out these weaker 2-prize cards. And that's a good rule of thumb. So for future hands, the strategy there is you want to double up 2 Charmanders, 2 Pidgeys, in case they knock one out because they get attacked the first turn. You'll be able to set everything up, and after you do, go ahead and take these out with your Professor Turos, or else they'll be a pretty easy target for their iron hands to amp you very much, especially the Lumineon. But with the more iron crowns they get on the field, they add 20 more damage to the attacking Pokemon. In terms of if your opponent is playing Dialga, this is also a good deck. If you could get set up quickly, you could start swinging on the Diagonal V. Even before they attack, you could start taking out the Metangs. Okay, next we'll talk about Isaiah Bradner's Lost Tina deck. So if you're unfamiliar with the new changes to Lost Tina since rotation, we will go through the whole list here. So for Pokemon, we have 4 Comfies, pretty standard, 3 Giratina Vs, 3 Giratina V Stars, and then what's new here is the addition of the Shuppet and Bennett EX. So with the Shuppet here, attack is Enveloping Shadow, flip a coin. If heads during your opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards from their hand. So this is a pretty good attack. Usually you wouldn't use this too much, but if you don't really have an option, you could prevent Charizard player from using Rare Candy, Charizard or Chinpao deck from evolving their Pokemon. Could prevent the Technical Radars to be used. Just a pretty annoying attack for your opponent to deal with their turn. Next would be the Banat EX. First attack is Everlasting Darkness. During your opponent's next turn, they can't play any item cards from their hand. And then your opponent reveals their hand. This attack does 6 damage for each trainer card you find there. Or you could evolve your Shuppet into this other Banat, which has an ability called Puppet Offering. So once during your turn, you can put a supporter card from your discard pile into your hand. If you do, put this Pokemon in the Lost Zone. So this is a pretty powerful move. If you needed to bring in your Boss's Orders or one of your Choruses, if you have a couple of them prized, just a good ability to have. So those are the new Pokemon in the Lost team. Well, actually we have the Iron Leaves down here. So Iron Leaves teched in for obviously the good against the Charizard EXs. So it does double damage. You can play it onto your bench, and its ability allows you to move it into the active spot and then attach a basic Pokemon or a basic energy to that. We have 1 Sableye, 1 Cramorant, 1 Radiant Greninja, 1 Manaphy, and that makes up the Pokemon. In some Lost Tina decks prior to rotation, they would play 2 Sableyes, but you have 1 here. Yeah, so moving on to supporter cards, we have 4 trainers, 4 course experiments, pretty standard. Only 1 boss's orders, 1 Roxanne. So that's all the supporter list. And then in terms of items, you have 4 Mirage Gates, 4 Nest Balls, 3 Switches, 2 Buddy Buddy Poffins, 2 Super Rods, 1 Ultra Ball, and 1 Counter Catcher. And the A spec is the Prime Catcher here. 1 Pokegear, usually played for consistency in the deck, and 1 for Seal Stone. For stadiums, we have Temple of Sinnoh, which turns all energies into just normal energy, 1 basic colorless energy, which is really good in the matchups against Lugia. We have 1 Artisan here, and then for energies, we have 5 Psychic energies, 4 Grass, and 4 Jet. So no waters for the Greninja. If you notice, there's 1 more Psychic, 1 more Grass energy compared to before the rotation. So Lost Tina, still a powerful deck. It's good against a lot of the meta decks out there. It can hold its own in Charizard with the Iron Leaves EX, and it's with the Giratina. It's still very powerful with your Star Requiem, able to knock out your opponent's Pokemon with 10 in a Lost Zone, or even just a Lost Impact, dealing damage for 280. So almost any Pokemon V-Stars, almost all Pokemon EXs are going to be taking out that attack if you're able to get your Giratina V-Stars out and 3 energies in there. Yeah. So we'll talk about 1 more Lost Tina deck. This actually got 7th place at the Orlando's Regionals, played by Brandon Dean. So this Lost Tina deck reflects more of the Lost Tina before rotation, pre-rotation. So in terms of Pokemon, you have 4 Comfies, only 2 Tina Vs versus a 3. Played pre-rotation, we have 3 Giratina V-Stars, 1 Sableye. Typically, a lot of Tina decks would play 2, but this one's playing 1. 1 Cramorant, 1 Radiant Greninja, an Iron Leaves EX, so as you know, this one is tech towards the Charizard matchups, 1 Manaphy, and 1 Spiritomb here, which is good not only against Charizard, but against decks that play Lumineon. We have Chin-Pao, Rotom V with the control decks. Spiritomb's really good against that. For supporters, we have 4 Colress Experiments, 2 Boss's Orders, 2 Roxannes, and a Thornton here. So Thornton allows you to choose a basic Pokemon in your discard pile and switch it with one of your basic Pokemon in play. Any attached cards, damage counters, special conditions, turns in play, and any other effects remain on the new Pokemon. So obviously this is mostly used for your Iron EXs when they get, when you take out their Charizard EX. A lot of times, every time they're able to return KO if they have another Charizard lined up, or able to evolve their next turn. You could use Thornton to take this from your discard and bring it back onto the field. And hopefully you have 7 in the Lost Zone, and then you can just use Mirage Gate to get your Grass energies and enough energies on here to power up. So that's Thornton. Well, obviously you could use it for Sableye and Cramorant too, but mostly it's used for the Iron Leaves or Giratina V. For item cards, there's a Mirage Gate, 3 Nest Balls, 3 Buddy Buddy Poffins, 2 Pokegear, 2 Switch Cards, 2 Switches, 2 Super Rods, 1 Ultra Ball, 1 Counter Catcher, 1 Prime Catcher, and 1 Rescue Board. This is really good for attaching it to your Comfies, so you're not burning switches or energies when you use your flower selecting in the early game. So just a lot more consistency with Giratina Vs. Ideally with this deck, you want to go first, since Battle VIP has been replaced more or less with Buddy Buddy Poffins. It doesn't matter if you need to use your supporters to dig and find your Battle VIPs anymore. 2 Pokegears for more consistency, so you find your Colress Experiments, make sure you get to 7 turn 2, that would be ideal. And then 2 Switch Cards, 2 Switches, that's pretty standard, 2 Super Rods. 1 Temple of Sinnoh, good against the decks that use special energies. You have your Lugia decks mostly, actually, yeah, mostly. So in terms of energy, there's 4 Grass energy, 3 Psychic energy, 3 Waters, and 3 Jets. So one big difference from the pre-rotation Lost Tina decks is that you would usually have 4 Psychic energy and 4 Jet energies, and only 3 Grass and 3 Waters. So we bumped up the Grass to 4, mostly for the Iron Leaves, so we could get that powered up. and then 3 sidekicks for your Tinas and Sableye. We have the water for the Radiant Greninja to use that as an option there as an attacker, and then the jet energy, 3 jet energies. So you'd play this deck more or less the same way. Ideally, you want to go first now, get a head start on putting cards into your Lost Zone, and then eventually you want to ideally get to 7, turn 2 or turn 3, so you can start powering up your attackers.